you get a copy of it, please? Oh, okay, well, all right, sure, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a great honor. I asked Mr. Owings, Professor Owings, to come back. He is retired, I know, but his wisdom has not. And in fact, I have a feeling that it's a shame that life is like that, that at your top of your profession is when you have to sort of give way to the younger people. That's life. But I wanted him to come back, and especially because he has enjoyed the amateurs and teachers in actual Masterclass. So give him a warm welcome. I know that many of you will come, and he has four participants to deal with. We will have somebody to give you a thumbs up in time. So give him a real warm welcome. Thank you.
And so we have a lot of music, and it's all fantastic music, so I'm really eager to get started. So are you playing the Lebewohl? Yes, please call it Lebewohl. That would be what Beethoven preferred, as you know. Okay, so, and your name is Joanne? Joanne, welcome. All right, give me 1 minute to get myself down here, hopefully without falling. Okay, whenever you're ready, Joanne. Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, very well done. I'm going to come up there and join you. Do you want to use your score that you gave me, or are you?
I have.
Okay, because I have my own that I prefer to use, but I'll give you this other one back. So interesting that we start off not by saying hello, but by saying goodbye with a farewell, a beautiful farewell. So I'll give you this back. I read with interest that you are quite a linguist.
Oh, yeah.
You're interested in languages, that's wonderful. And so I'm sure you know the story behind this sonata that Beethoven wrote it for the Archduke Rudolph. He even tells us a lot of information in the title page. In his own hand, the farewell, Vienna, he gives us the date, 4th of May, 1809. The departure of His Royal Highness, the esteemed Archduke Rudolph. And it was written for the Archduke, who was a Beethoven student.
Oh, okay.
Those of you who are teachers, take note. The great Beethoven was a teacher, as well as a great composer, pianist, conductor, and so he didn't have a lot of students, but the Archduke was one that he taught for a number of years, and a very gifted, you might say, amateur musician. So the amateurs, there you are. Being an amateur doesn't put you in a second class. Sometimes amateurs are very, very high quality, as in this case the Archduke was. So why did Beethoven write this on the date that he gives us? What is the reason that he decided to write this sonata and present it to the Archduke? Well, okay. So at this, on this date, the Archduke had to leave because there was a war going on. Napoleon's troops, the French troops, were about to invade Vienna, and the whole imperial family was in danger. So they had to flee for safety, and it had to be done rather quickly, for obvious reasons. So by this time in Beethoven's life, he was at the maturity of his middle period, where he had already written so many of his great works that we're familiar with, the first 6 symphonies, the first 25 piano sonatas. This is number 26, so imagine how much he had written. So he was a mature composer, and writing something for the Archduke was something he took very seriously. And he respected the Archduke respected him. So he takes some things that are very appropriate when one is writing for nobility, for aristocracy. So, first of all, he chose the key of E flat major. By the way, the Archduke also was not only, Beethoven not only dedicated this work to him, but many others, as you may know, many of his important works. The last 2 piano concertos, this sonata, the Opus 111, the Hammerklavier, his biggest sonata, the trio, Opus 97, that one. One of his most beautiful and wonderful pieces of chamber music, sometimes known as the Archduke Trio. So this was a big deal. And this departure was a big deal. It was no minor inconvenience with a war and a battle about to take place. Imagine, in your own streets, in your own town. So this was a very big deal. So he chooses something appropriate, the key of E flat, which is always, I think, in Beethoven's mind and in other composers' mind, a key of nobility, Mm? And the start of this suggests what instruments, if this were not
Horns?
horns, exactly. That's typical horn music, isn't it? And those intervals are typical horn. And it was the third, the fifth, and then the sixth. But what happens is that when he gets to the third note, and we expect maybe he would do that, because then we know the key, without a doubt. E flat major, but no, he does. Quite a surprise. C minor. So from the start, we're not sure what key we're in, right? Could you just play that opening for me one more time? Yes. If this were horns, then we can't make the piano into two horns, but we can think of the sound of horns. You know, when you think of horns, horns always project. You know, whenever you hear the horns in the orchestra, even if they're playing softly, they project. It projects. So I would suggest you play this with a little deeper, more projected sound, and not loud, because he marks it piano, but he also marks it espressivo, which I think would mean that we should play it as if we're expressing something. What is he expressing? He's expressing the lebe wohl, which, as you know, it translates, I think, farewell. Yes, farewell. And he was really upset when this sonata was published, and the publisher chose to put a French title, Les Adieux. And he didn't even mention that this was written for the Archduke Rudolph. Imagine that. Well, you know, Beethoven had all kinds of problems with his publishers. A lot of them were very ignorant. And so he was infuriated by this. And he wrote a letter expressing his feelings. He says, no, this is lebe wohl, because adieu, you can say that to a whole crowd of people. That's impersonal. Lebe wohl is what you say to a person, to a dear friend. And it means farewell. Yes, literally that's what it means. And it means, I know this is happening, you have to leave because of the danger, but I'm wishing you well in this journey you have to take, and I hope that eventually you will return, which did happen. It has a happy ending after the second movement, which is called the absence, which is all about anxiety. I mean, you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have emails, you couldn't find out what's happening. Yes, my dear friend is off somewhere, hopefully safe, but I can't know until I get news that he has returned with the rest of his companions, and then everything turned out fine. But this ambiguity, this doubt, this uncertainty in this opening, and it's expressed very beautifully by not knowing quite where we are in the key. And then it sounds like C minor, doesn't it? So we're not really sure. And then this is another lebe wohl. Lebe wohl. And you find this lebe wohl throughout everywhere. I mean, you could be like a detective. See where you find it. It's everywhere. Sometimes it's hidden in the texture. Sometimes it's upside down instead of. You couldn't do that. Sometimes it's in the bass, which happens in this part. It's worthwhile to follow that bass line as it goes down and is generated by that opening motto, yes? And then in the allegro, we find it, yes? We find it very often. And even in this, you know that, so yes? So you've done a good study of the work to know, yes? You've done your detective work, so to speak, because it's everywhere, and it's the motto, it's the, yeah? It's the whole essence of this movement, whatever he does with it. And you know, the year before this, in 1808, Beethoven wrote the Symphony No. 6, called the Pastoral Symphony. And that has a sort of a program. He gave titles to the movements, and he gave titles to the movements in this sonata. So two of his works we label programmatic, yes, because they have some program to them. But then he said, after writing the Pastoral, that it's not about describing things. It's not about depicting scenes and all. It's more about the feelings evoked by nature in the case of the Pastoral. And I think it applies here. It's not a depiction, you know. It's not like a kind of musical script of events, you know, this happened, then that happened, then that happened. There's imagery, of course. I think there's definitely some imagery I think you can hear when the departure happens, which is very sudden after the and then all of a sudden it has to happen rather suddenly. There's no time to waste. And so what I would suggest is don't wait.
Oh, okay.
Don't wait. No, because it's at the end of the farewell. There are these silences. It's almost as if he's run out of words to speak. It's just the feeling of farewell. And then suddenly they're off. And the transportation is not by airplane or by train, but by horse-drawn coach. So I think the imagery is clear that this suggests somehow the horses and then perhaps the wheels turning. So there is imagery, but it's not really about depicting things so much as the feelings, the mixture of feelings. There's a mixture of emotions here. It's not tragic because there's hope. There's hope that it will all turn out well, but there's also concern. And there's the personal feeling of warmth, of having to bid farewell to a friend. So can you go again from the beginning? I have a couple of comments, mainly about tempo and maintaining the pulse within each tempo. So how many tempi are there in this movement? Only two. So make sure that when you play it, there are only two tempi. And they're not 3 or 4 within the adagio. They're not 3 or 4 within the allegro. Yes, there can be some times where you maybe pull back slightly or push forward. The music tells us that naturally, where to have a little more forward motion, where to ease up a bit, but not so much that you feel there are lots of different tempi. So I think of the 8th note, bum, 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 ram, ram, that you want, all the expression you want to give it can be within that tempo. You don't have to do anything to change it, yes? So can we try it once more? And a deeper sound. Not louder, not louder. You don't want to land on it, but let the minor add a color, yes, because these are the third, and then the fifth, and then we still hear the sixth, but it's what's underneath it. So it's still piano, yeah, but a projected sound. And that's now don't change your tempo. To me, this is the oboe playing very expressively. Now one and two and on. Keep the eighth note pulse. Listen to your bass. Maybe a little less here. And then a off. Wait. Wait. Now a little less. Now warmer teams. Yeah, so I would suggest really all you have to do to make sure that this happens is to count. No? This is a very simple thing. But if you just count inside, count your eighth notes. You don't even have to use numbers. You know, I don't always say one and two. Boom, boom. But keep that inner pulse. Keep that inner pulse. Then everything fits together. Everything makes a beautiful entity. Huh? Yeah? Because it's a short introduction, really, isn't it? I mean, it has to, it can't be prolonged because of the urgency of the situation. So just keep counting all the time, and count these rests and one. Go ahead. 2, 1, and 2, Oh, no, you have to wait for this rest. And then right away, not with the fortissimo, not with the fortissimo, because the forte is plenty after pianissimo, and these are like, I don't know what more to say. I mean, you know, it's like that. It's like I've run out of words to say, and so there's these just almost gasps. And then this forte. One thing I notice is that you have too much tension in your wrist when you're playing, and that causes sometimes this sort of attack. You wait, and now just forte. Right now. Okay, so now you have to establish this new tempo, which is allegro, and we talked about how to feel the pulse in the adagio. And it is two, yes, there are two big beats, that's true. But I think for ensuring that we keep everything on track rhythmically, I feel the eighth note inside, I feel the eighth note pulse. Now we come to the allegro. And it's allegro, but it's also what we call cut time, or alla breve. So how many beats in our pulse.
One or no,
Two, yes, only two, not four. So it's not a 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. The horses would never reach their destination if they had to go that slowly. Yes, it would be very risky. So they have to move rather quickly. So it's a pulse of 2, right? And so these are not beats. These are not beats, 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 beats. No, these are upbeats leading to the beats. So the beat notes are yum, dim, paradam, paradam, and lo and behold, what do we have? Yes, in the beginning of the allegro, but we don't hear it if you give us that, we miss. That's the line. That's the line. So these are yaratam, taratam, not taratam, 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 taratam. That's what. So even if you don't get to the tempo that you may want to have, eventually, which I would suggest needs to be quite a bit faster than this, in order to feel this sort of. I don't want to say agitation. It's urgency. I think it's something that must happen. You know, and it can't take all day. It's got to happen now. There's an urgency, immediacy about it. And so, but if you feel the pulse in 2, I think you'll get more of that feeling. It's not comfortable, in other words. It's not a comfortable situation. It's rather the opposite of something being very, very comfortable and easygoing. But yum, ta-da-tim, 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 ta-da-tim. And later on, you notice that Beethoven only takes this ta-da-tum, ta-da-tum, ta-da-da figure, and sometimes the quarter note is short, is a staccato. So to make sure we understand, it's not that here. He puts tenuto, and I would think he wants tenuto on all of them, and then sforzando. So it's always going to there, to there, to. Yes, that's better. And be careful with the pedal, because you know you have all these chromatic notes in the bass, so you don't want to smear them with the pedal. Yes, pedal, but I wouldn't pedal. Except maybe pedal the long notes, but not. It makes it a little bit smeary. Yeah, and you don't have to go that fast now, but do try to feel the pulse of 2. Yum. Yeah, and yum, pam, pim, and this also has a sforzando. Yes. So it's not just up here and then it falls down. Yum, pum, pam, pa, and then it's piano, right? Yum, pam, yes, and I know everybody fears this next passage, myself included. I have to admit, it scares me. But that shouldn't prevent us from giving up this feeling. Yeah, this journey is still, it's going on. It doesn't slow down. They don't run into a big pothole or something where they have to. No, it keeps going, and it has this tremendous energetic forward motion. Try to maintain that. I know it's a very, very difficult passage. There's no way around that, and it takes lots and lots of practice, all these. And then of all things, very difficult, and you have to really work hard on that, I know. And you have to figure out the motion of your hand, how you get from there to there, and from there to there, and from there to there. If you break it into little groups like that, I think that helps. I don't want to say this is the solution, because there is no the solution. You know? But there's some things that can help get it better. So, but don't give up the energy that is being generated by this event. Huh? So try to keep it going, and then these are short and rather crisp, and then when you come back to this, don't suddenly go to a faster tempo because you're happy that you made it this far, and now you can speed up. No, that's not a good idea. Maintain the same pulse you had. Yum, bum, ba. Yum, bum, bum, ba. He just changes the rhythm instead of... See, yum, bum, 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 bum. Bum, bum, bum. And you have to maintain this forward motion and this pulse of two. Yum, yum, bum, bum. Yeah, but this is still forte, isn't it? This is still forte, 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 yum, and ye. And listen to that harmony has some intensity behind it, doesn't it? Huh? Yes, if you want a sforzando, what do you do when you want to create a sforzando? And let's say you're in a forte dynamic. How do you approach it physically? What do you do? Yeah, that's right. You need more speed of attack. You need more speed of attack. Yeah, faster attack, because if you go slowly, you might get a nice warm sound, but what's needed here is not so much warmth as intensity. This needs intensity because of the dissonance. Yes, not harshness, but intensity. Yeah. And that note crescendos too. So you see, this all comes back to this mixture of emotions, that while this is all in the major key, flat major, all is well and good, but Beethoven brings in this minor color. He does it in something he does in the beginning, you see. Instead of, that would be very normal, because it would keep within the scale notes of E flat, but, and that adds another element. So it's not a sort of happy-go-lucky E flat major, because things are not happy-go-lucky, right? And so here he's doing it also. This sounds very different from E flat major, doesn't it? And there's dissonance. Those G flats add that element, and he'll do that other places. He loves to do that, and more so in his later works, but also in his earlier works. In the very first sonata, you find in the second theme the same kind of adding this minor touch of minor color that brings another element in. You can't say this is happy completely or this is sad completely. There's this mixture, and it's a wonderful way how he expresses it throughout this movement. So, but try to maintain within the tempo what you're doing with your expression, with your dynamics. And when you come to this, do follow the upper line, because that's the Lebewohl theme, yes? And he marks again espressivo, which I think to me is project your sound, even if it's piano, project it. Like he says in the beginning, espressivo is not just a kind of warm, fuzzy feeling, you know. It doesn't mean that, or lots of crescendos and decrescendos, but it's a kind of sound that you feel comes from within. You know, it's the feeling that comes from inside of you that you're expressing, as Beethoven is expressing his inner feelings. And there's some anxiety in those syncopations in the left hand. And through what he does with color there. So then in the development section, again, maintain the pulse of 2. It's the same tempo. And it breaks off very suddenly. Breaks off, and then it goes, recalling the Leberwohl theme, but not the complete theme. So he does lots of different things, as he was known to do. With just a simple theme, he could break it up into all kinds of different parts and turn it upside down, and he does all those things here because, after all, I mean, he is a great composer, and writing a piece for the Archduke, you don't write a second-rate piece. Not if you're Beethoven. You write your best piece with all your compositional skills that you have, and then that's what he does. And so with this simple, he does all kinds of things. It just, and then it goes up here, and then recalling the da-da-dum. But always you can keep this inner pulse. If you keep this inside of you, then everything will be in its place, so to speak. Huh? Yeah, you won't go off into, you won't go out of orbit, so to speak. Huh? So keep this inner pulse. Yum. 2, 1, 2, yum, 1, 2, yum, bum, bum. Always keep that. Yeah. Huh? Can you? We have just maybe a minute or two. Can you try just from anywhere in this development section? Or how about from yum, bum, yes, that's good. Yum, ba-da-dum, 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 to pum, pum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da-dum. Yeah, I wouldn't use so much pedal because then it's not quite clear. And I don't know what fingering you're using, but to me it works better if I change the finger. Here I use 5, 2, 1. Because it's awkward to try to do the repeated note with the same finger, especially at tempo. So you might try that, so that you're able to get this rhythm while he's doing this Leberwohl, the long notes that bring back into our mind the opening motto, the Leberwohl motto. And then underneath that, this motion of the carriage, both happening at the same time. It's wonderful how he's able to create this with the simplest material and do so much with it. Yeah, I know we are. What is the time?
All the time. 1 minute.
1 minute. Oh my gosh. Well, then, I would suggest at the last part, because this is again a very difficult part, and you have obviously the Leberwohl, then in the left hand, and then it transfers up and it transfers up, and it seems to be coming from everywhere, really from far off somewhere. This sound of the horns announcing the departure, and the feeling that it creates. But technically, I mean, pianistically, this is not easy. I don't have to tell you, huh? No, it's not easy. All this, it takes some work, but I think what gets in the way, from what I'm hearing, is your pedaling.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because it's as one of my teachers said, adding the pedal doesn't cover up our problems. It only creates another problem. And so if you add pedal, it doesn't cover up that you maybe didn't practice quite enough, but it doesn't it doesn't solve that problem. Yeah. So, but I think the pedal here is something you have to work out. And then the last thing I'll say, because this is, the movement is coming to an end, the farewell has happened, the departure has happened, the carriage is off somewhere, who knows where, by this time, but the feeling remains, doesn't it? The feeling that Beethoven is expressing, this warmth and everything, it still remains, and it remains to the very end, but it kind of goes off into the distance, and in this very mysterious. It's all pianissimo. And he writes again pianissimo, and the strangest dynamic you will find anywhere. Crescendo? How can we? Huh? We have to think it. We have to think it. That you know, and the other thing I'll say is always get off the note when he says to get off the note. Off. Don't hang on. He wants this kind of exchange to happen, just the way he writes it. And so here, the same thing, get off of the left hand, right where he says, and then you think, yum, rum, rum, and it's all over with and done, nothing more to do. It's happened. We all go home and wait and hope for the best, right? Okay. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to see you, a familiar face.
Likewise.
Yeah.
How many movements would you like me to play?
It's entirely up to you. We can go one at a time if you like.
Well, if we do all four, it'll take up half of our time just to play it. So
Yeah, so what would you like to start with the first movement?
start with the first movement.
Okay,
Fine, sure.
that's very good, yes.
This for you.
Oh, okay, I have my own
have your own?
score, yeah, so. And I'll try to get down here without falling all over myself. Okay. We'll see how the time goes because I would really love to hear some of the other movements. We'll just have to play that, as they say, by ear. Really beautiful playing. I like your approach to the sound. It's never harsh, and you have a nice fluidity in your approach to this music, which I think is very appropriate for it. This is, as you know, very early Debussy. Yes. Not the sounds that we have come to know from later Debussy, where he uses all these mysterious whole tones and things like that. And so, I don't know, I hate to use the word normal, but I mean, you might say in a way it's more like normal music than those who think Debussy got quite eccentric in his later years and did weird things. This is not weird at all. It's very accessible. It's something you can listen to easily without wondering what in the world is going on, right? But there are some strange things. I think that very first harmony, does it sound like what you would expect?
No, I mean, it's not.
Obviously not, and not even later music. So it's an unusual harmony, and it got me thinking. You know, I started thinking. Well, you know, at this time in Debussy's life, it wasn't yet the kind of music that we later called impressionistic. Yeah, fogs and mists and all that is quite out in the open, isn't it? But besides the emerging painters that influenced him, the so-called impressionistic painters and the symbolist poets, is there any other aspect of music or any other influence in his earlier works that you know of or perhaps have read about or someone has told you about?
He admired Rameau, I know that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And he wrote a piece, Hommage à Rameau, later.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So he was.
He tried to visit Brahms, and Brahms wouldn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, that sounds rather typical of Brahms, doesn't it? But do you know where he traveled to outside of France? He was born in Paris, in Russia. Yeah, he spent a few years in Russia under the patronage of Madame von Meck, who was also the patroness of Tchaikovsky. And he was introduced to Russian music, to Russian artists, to Russian culture. And, you know, this chord just got me thinking. It would not be out of place in a Russian piece.
Oh, yeah. Oh, sure.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Yeah.
You know, that harmony. It just jumps out at you like, where have I heard that? And it's it's there. So there's no way we can prove, and we don't want to accuse Debussy of plagiarizing, but somehow it strikes me that perhaps the sounds of those Russian composers that he was hearing maybe stuck in his ear. And, you know, that's Borodin.
Yeah.
It's also a musical kismet.
Also, I think the ending of the first arabesque is almost borrowed from the end of Beethoven's first movement of 109.
Yeah, it's the E major, you're right about that. So I think of this as very Russian influenced in harmony and in some ways, since this is a suite, what kind of music would you expect to find in a suite? Well, certainly in the suites of Bach, if you think of the...
Well, different movements with a theme, sort of uniting the movements. In this case, Renaissance era dance.
Dance, exactly. That is the key word. Usually in a suite, you'll find music that is maybe not called by dance titles, although the second movement is a minuet, the last movement is a passe-pied, but dance related. Yeah. I could easily imagine this as a ballet score. With the twirls and twists of ballet and gestures of ballet dancers and lifting the girl up and the girl spinning around and doing all these pirouettes and things. It seems to me that he probably was somehow influenced by ballet. Because when you think of Russian music, one of the first things that comes to your mind is ballet. Right? So that's just a few things that struck me about this music. But I really like your approach. I think in a way maybe you're a little too soft-spoken at times with this music because it's Debussy and we think Debussy has to always be played kind of in half tones. You can never really play loud, although you did play loud at the end, which I liked. I enjoyed that. It sort of opened up. But I wouldn't keep it quite so subdued in the beginning. Not that it should be extremely loud, but I think there can be a richness and a fullness to the sound. And I also thought I heard that you used the left pedal in a number of places.
Yes, on and off. Yeah.
On and off, but okay, that's fine. But do you have any kind of plan in mind as to where and why you might want to use the left pedal?
Well, there is one place, for example, where the next part has to be softer, and I use the left pedal here.
Good. I think that's a very good idea, and I would reserve the use of the left pedal for where you want a special color. And that is definitely one place. And you can find other places where the left pedal will give you that color. And that's the way I would think of the left pedal, as not the soft pedal, as it's sometimes called, you know, and then this was the loud pedal, I guess. Not quite accurate. So don't think of, you have to use the left pedal whenever the music is soft, like your, I think it muffles the sound a bit too much. I like the delicacy of the sound there, but I think it can have a little more brightness and enjoy more this sort of unprepared suspension. And then perhaps when it's pew piano, if you wanted a color change there. So basically, I would approach this, if you can find, say, a wider palette, yes? And Debussy doesn't give us a lot of help with that. I mean, lots of places are marked P, and then sometimes pew P, more P, P, P. Well, but are all those the same? Is every place marked P the same? No, I don't think so. And we shouldn't think of it as the same. We have our sound that's P, and we have our sound that's F, and we have our sound that's this, and that's a little too cut and dried, I think. I would go for a wider palette, different kinds of fortes, different kinds of pianos, different shades of color, because I think that's really what brings this music more to life. So I find that maybe you're a little bit too soft-spoken at times, where you can open up even before that big ending, which is quite, well, I think, you know, it is marked fortissimo, which is what it wants. Huh? But I think even something like would play out a little bit more. You played it very quietly, very subdued, and he writes accents, yum bum, and I think if that rings out a little more. Afraid to open up the sound when the music calls for it. And then that gives you a sort of wider palette of colors. And even to me that suggests brass instruments. Huh? And not harsh, not fortissimo, but very full and very rich. Which gives you more contrast than to that kind of sound, to that kind of color. So that's basically what I would tell you. I think you're doing it really, really beautifully, but I would explore more what you can get out of the piano in terms of color. And left pedal only where, you know, plan where you really want it or need it, or where it enhances something. And the thing with the left pedal is it does muffle the sound. So if we want to contrast with this more una corda sound and something else, make sure that something else isn't the same. Yeah? If you want two different colors, they have to be different. They can both be soft, but not the same soft. Let's just try a little bit from the beginning again. I think you can go a little bit more, a little more deep into the key, not with a harsh attack, but a little bit more weighted. I would say this needs a little more weight to the sound. Yes. Personally, I don't feel the need for a ritardando after we arrive. I like to hear that leads us somewhere. Huh? Yeah. Yes, that's right. It's because I feel that there should never be a moment where we feel stuck, as it were. And if we do, to me it sounds a little bit stuck, rather than connecting it with what follows. And then all of these, I think they lead us to the long note. The short notes always go to the long notes, don't they? And while we rest on that G, we listen to the harmony change underneath it. But we have to find a means to keep the music moving so that it never stalls, it never gets stuck. So I would suggest go on into it and do whatever you want. And listen. I think it can open up just a bit more. Try once more. That's right. So that gives you the opportunity to do something a little different here. Because the harmony is different, yes, from the first time. And now it, yeah, so there are things that you can play with. There are tools you can use, in other words. And it's really up to you, because there's so many ways to approach this music. And you'll never hear two performances that are identical, because it just lends itself to a sort of spontaneous improvisatory feeling, which is wonderful. And but I think what I'm hearing is you're keeping it all a little bit too subdued, and that robs you of having a bit more. So you can think the piano doesn't necessarily have to all be the same. And this is piano. This is also piano. You can think of them as being slightly different colors. Maybe this is maybe more open, maybe this is, or the opposite. It can be the reverse, this can be a little less, and this can be more. There's so many different ways you can approach this music, and that it gives us this freedom, this opportunity to explore a whole range of colors. But try again from, and I think that can ring out a little more. Yes. Did you use left pedal there?
Right there I did, yes.
To me, it covers up the I think that needs to sing out a little more, even though it's suddenly piano, yes. But I still want a little bit more.
Can I wait for half a moment after?
Yes, of course. Yes, of course. You can wait when there's something that calls for waiting or lingering. Give yourself the opportunity to do that. But the color change is good, but I wouldn't muffle that quite so much. A little more voicing. That's right. So, see, the voicing is such an important tool, isn't it? When we think of color and finding different colors, one of the tools we have is how we voice. And we can voice more to the top, if we choose to do that. Or we can voice more to the bass, or we can bring out more of the inner voices. We have all these tools at our disposal. So I'm just giving you some suggestions. That sounded more open to me, because I don't feel this is muffled and subdued. I feel that it's an openness. Then bring in the bass or the left hand. And then I would play this quite rhythmically. And all staccato. And then even more. And even more. This can sound very rich. And then that gives you a bigger contrast to this more delicate, lace-like sonority. So that's all I'm saying, is nothing that you're doing needs to be changed, but added to give you more possibilities of color. Yeah? And then I would lean a little bit more. That's the juicy note. Without that, it's just A minor. Yeah, but lean into it. See, I put a little bit more of the weight. Huh?
On the B?
Yeah, on the B, because that's the juicy note, isn't it? And then più piano. Right. And so on. And you know, when something comes so many times of the same thing, what do you think of? I'm just going to do it the same way. Well, it's not that you have to do it differently, but it gives you the opportunity. So it's up to you. You can find different kinds of voicing, different colors, because this happens over and over and over again, and we don't want it to be the same every time. You can hear a little bit more, maybe that E in the chord going to the, or you can hear the C going to the. These possibilities of voice leading and voicing give us more tools to play with, as it were. Huh? And then, as you said, this should be special. It's very harp-like, it's very subdued. But then after that, where he goes, it opens up a little bit. And this is a very special moment, because we're going from there to there. Again, that sounds somehow quite Russian to me. So you can approach it in two different ways. You can let the crescendo open up to there, or you can build and then come back. Both ways could work. You know, again, it's your choice. So, but I like the crescendo to be a little bit more. And I would lift the una cordum after. So there's a more open sound, and then if you want that to be softer, that's up to you.
Yeah, I probably would, yes.
Yeah, that's fine. And then I would not hide the top note. And then here I think the inner voices are very beautiful. Direction of those inner voices. Yeah? Good. Do you have any questions? Just things for you to think about. And of course, this is another moment that I think it's appropriate to use left pedal, but I felt, yes, of course. that's such a special moment. But I felt before that it was too quiet, so that it didn't really make me kind of, my ears perked up and, oh, wasn't that wonderful? So if you're a little more open, enjoy the richness. Then that will be more effective. You know, everybody will get it. Hmm? But if they're too similar in sound, it doesn't have quite the effect. Yeah? You can, I think, be even a little more theatrical with some of these things, because I think this music lends itself to that. It's not subdued in the sense of it's being quite projected to the listener. Let the ear really hear all of these wonderful changes. Okay, would you like to play another movement? I'll just stay up here. Sure.
Need help with pages? Can I get Joel back up here?
I'll turn your pages. I'm pretty good at that.
I believe you.
You're fine. Bravo. Beautifully done. Beautifully done, yes. I enjoy that very much. You have a real feel, I think, for this music.
I was trying to use what you just said about when to use the soft pedal and when not to.
Right, and it applies here as well, although this is marked very delicately, and so I think we don't need the left pedal, but our touch should be light and delicate. One thing that stuck out to me is the way you're playing this little ornament. To my ears, that little ornament sounded a little bit too slow. Da-da-dum. It's a very quick ornament. Da-da-dum. It's like a written out, like we sometimes find this little sign in Baroque music telling us to play a quick little ornament. So I would try to play it a little bit quicker. Have you thought about this? Because this is rather tricky to do with one hand. Have you thought about taking your left hand?
Oh, I use the left hand on the B, actually.
Yes, you can do that too. Whatever gives you the best results. But I would play it a little bit more delicately. It to me sounds a little heavy and slow. And try to make it a little lighter. Like all these little ornaments, all these little turns, I think in this minuet can be very, very light. And then when you have these, I would try to make it a little more bell-like, with just the touch of pedal on the note itself, and then get off, and then a little more ring to the sound, and that happens also at the end, where you have these. I think these sounds need to have a little more ring, like a percussion instrument, but this has a ring to it. Bum bum beat it up, bum bum bum. Yeah, I like that the ring to the sound. This can be thought of, I think, somewhat orchestrally, in fact. Little chime, a little bell that goes off. Yes. Then when it's warm and singing, you want to feel like here you have the strings playing beautifully, lyrically. There's so many different colors. I also find that you can take more advantage of your left hand, of your bass. When the bass goes way down, as happens here, the distance between this and that, it invites a little more left hand, a little more bass. Otherwise, it sounds to me a little bit thin. If we only hear this, but not quite enough. And they're so far apart, this is not going to interfere. We'll still hear that. There are several places where I felt it just needed a little bit more filling out of the richness of the sound. Also be careful about how much damper pedal you use, especially in this movement, which has some very delicate and very transparent textures to it. And wherever you have this, and even here, I wouldn't add a lot of pedal. I think it can keep this more transparent. If you want to say more French sound, that's okay, I guess, but I would never let it get thick with too much pedal. These scales, to me, these are glissandos. They're not scales. They're not like we've been practicing our scales. And now they're perfect. No, it's more like Something like that. It's an effect.
Yeah, but still use scale fingering.
Well, yes, of course. I mean, I'm not saying you should do glissandos, but it should have the effect, I think, of that, as he does actual glissando at the very end. So I think this kind of harp-like glissando effect also applies here. And then you have these accents where he puts them. Voicing, I think you can voice even more. Enjoy those harmonies. Huh? Yeah. Really relish them. Yeah. And throughout, when you have the opportunity to do that. So that's all. I think you're playing it really beautifully. I'd love to hear Clair de Lune and Passepied, but I'm afraid the clock is telling us we just don't have the time for that. But congratulations, very well done. Huh? Thank you. All right, now we have Shiori with Haydn. Good morning. How are you? Are you playing from memory, or do you need your?
Yes, I'm in memory, but
Okay.
so just real quick, everybody, we can have like a 2-3 minute.
Oh, sure. Yes, of course.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have my own score, so if you want to hang on to that. Oh, okay. No, I brought my own, so I'm sure yours is fine. Sure, you're welcome. Thank you. That was wonderfully played. Very intelligent playing, perceptive, well understood. The style, the tempo, everything you do is right in keeping with the spirit and the style. Go ahead and have a seat. So it's really on a very high level. I think, you know, this is one of Haydn's very last sonatas. And you know, Haydn as a young boy was sometimes quite naughty and played practical jokes on people and pranks. You know, of course, the famous story where he was in the Vienna choir boys and cut off the pigtails of the choir boy in front of him and got expelled, which he was fine with because, you know, he was pretty much soured on all the rigors and discipline of being in the choir and was ready to branch out on his own. Besides, his voice had changed. He was no longer that pure boy soprano, but the Empress said he sounded like a crow. So it was pretty much time for him to leave that setting. And he managed to do it by doing a prank. And, you know, then later, he doesn't become less of a boyish prankster. He's just more mature about it. So even in his later years, he's full of pranks and jokes in his music. And this movement starts with a joke. Do you know what the joke is? Musically speaking. Well, when you look at the right hand, which starts with a simple theme, outlining the C major, but then, and then, it seems that the harmony should change after, that should be, or maybe, in other words, it shouldn't stay on C, but it does. The left hand refuses to move. Just keeps doing that. No matter what the right hand does, harmonically, the left hand says, I'm just going to do bum, 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 bum. Or maybe, bottom, bottom. And so the right hand gets very upset about that. Don't you hear what I'm doing? I'm going to a different harmony. And I'm going to a different harmony. But you're stuck on that. Are you asleep? And so the right hand gets pretty upset about it. And don't you hear me? You still don't hear me? Now you do. Huh? Get off of that C and go somewhere else. So it's a kind of a joke, the sort of thing that Haydn loved to do. But I think there are other places where he's playing jokes on us and surprising us with things. I think you can exploit that element a little bit more. I hear your intentions. I think you could project those intentions even a little bit more. So where this crescendos, and then it doesn't just crescendo, it's crescendos with a sforzando, a very insistent kind of gesture. Yeah, huh? Don't you hear me? Don't you hear me? Don't you hear me? And it doesn't have to be fortissimo, but I think you have to really project it a little bit more, this insistence and this stubbornness of the left hand that just won't budge. And I think this is more, this is less, because it suggests something like that if he had written the harmonies that should go with those notes. So I think you can do a little difference in and then more, less. Gets impatient. Gets really upset. And even what you do physically matters. When there's a surprise in music, the last thing you want to do is anticipate it or give it away. You should pretend at least. And I know everybody here knows the piece, so you can't fool them. They know what's coming. But you should pretend that they don't know what's coming. That this is a total unexpected outburst after this seemingly very polite and proper music. Then it should have a sort of humor to it. Yeah? So don't give away the surprise. And all of a sudden, you see, it's the suddenness, it's the surprise. And maybe I overdid it. But something like that is necessary so everybody out there gets it. It doesn't mean they're going to burst out with laughter, but at least they might smile a bit and say, that was a surprise, wasn't it? Yeah. Can you try the opening again?
So I have one question.
Yeah, sure.
The right hand is kind of opposite, and then the left hand should be like more cool.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Like I'm asleep. Don't wake me up. Don't wake me up. Yeah, it's a kind of a joke. Two people, duet like two different instruments. Yeah? So try it again. It's a very good choice of tempo, by the way. It's exactly right. Bum, 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 bum. Then lam, bee-um, bum, bee-um, bum, ba-ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum, bum. Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's timing also, isn't it? It's timing. And the people who are successful at comedy, and I could never be one of them, but they don't just spontaneously get up and tell something and everybody laughs. They practice it. They practice it. It's a craft. It's knowing how to make people laugh. And it's all in the timing. If the timing is off, people won't laugh. If you tell the punchline too soon or too late, nobody's going to care. They might laugh at you, but they won't laugh at the joke. Yeah. So it's timing, and that was better. Now I think you're anticipating the crescendo a little bit by giving away. Not yet. Now a little more, and now more, and then he kind of gives up, and then rum, 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 something like that. But that's good. Let's go on because there's more to talk about. Rum, rum, rum. Now he, and again, I would think that's more, and then that's less. And it doesn't have to be night and day, but something, I think, because of the change of harmony. And in my edition, I have, and your place, so we maybe are not in agreement. Tirara, the slurs over the not da-da-dum, da-da-dum. Yeah, I think that's, well, one can argue which edition is right and which is not right. But I think it's worth trying because it's a little different than these little things do make a difference. That is, how many notes are there in the slur? Is the note before that detached, and so on? All these little kind of nitpicky things about articulation, but I think here, yeah. So can you go from and rum, 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 not so short, not so short. It's not the same as that, is it? It's not staccato. Good, keep going. Yeah, so I don't know, this is just a personal thing, and you don't have to agree. But when we have repeated notes, I like to change the direction of my hand. So it's not thump bump, but yum bump, bump bump, and we get that, which I just like the sound of that better than da da. So it's a very small difference, but I think sounds a little, I don't know. You get the point. Yum bump. More playful perhaps than bump bump. Yeah, so I would change, if you don't change the finger, change the direction of your hand. You can go this way, you can go that way, but don't go twice, da da. Yeah, because that to me is a little annoying. Huh? Da da, rum pum, rum pum. Yeah. So go from there. Bum, bum, bum. Yeah, now, so you have 1, 2, 3 times. I wouldn't do them all the same. So this one is more, this one is less, what you did. This one is more, this one is less. But now this one, I would come down. Yeah, do something. So it's not 3 times we hear the same thing. And you're doing correctly. The 16th note is not part of the slurs. There's that little, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah? And later on, that happens. Yeah. It's not, you're playing leg up, all the way. It's a small difference, but these articulation things in this music are worth noting. So it's slightly different. So again, from and then like dialogue. There's some, and then. I think you can do more. Yeah? Go from there. Yes. Keep going. Yeah, so the surprise is in the little tag that he puts at the end, which is suddenly piano. But if you want it to be suddenly piano, don't be piano before. Yeah, that's right. He doesn't say piano. It's crescendo, crescendo. Then that will be a surprise. Yeah? Good. We'll go from there. Forte, yes. Another surprise. Huh? All these sudden dynamic changes are meant to be surprises. Yes? Even you know what's coming, they know what's coming. Still, you can surprise us. You can do it. Yeah? So this was good. And now this is, and notice it's not that staccato, but it's just eighth. Bom, 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 bom. Subtle difference, but it's still there. And then the counter melody. So go from the forte. Not so staccato here. Do you have staccatos there? Yeah, So it's not quite the same as that. Bom, bom, bom. That's right. Bom, 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 bom. Party, 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 Good. Yes, that was very good. What really stands out to me is the harmony. Obviously now we're in G major, and this is where if Haydn were following, the procedures of Mozart and other composers, he would write a different theme here, right? He would write a new theme in the key of the dominant, but he doesn't. It's the same theme. He just takes it and puts it in the bass. So we often refer to this kind of thing as a monothematic movement. There's only one real theme, legitimate theme, and that's this, which he's going to play around with. And now he puts it in the bass. But then when it comes to that, to me, is quite a surprise. At least I didn't expect that, did you? No. And now these kind of reversed slurs that don't go with the beat, they go against the beat. He's doing that. Now, it's hard to do and keep track of where your pulse is, but I think it's worth trying to do so we don't turn the slur around and make. But he hasn't said diminuendo yet. Not in my score. Does he have diminuendo in yours? Not at that point. Not at that point. No, much later. So this stays quite a while in the forte. Yes, shape it naturally, but don't come down to piano yet. So then, I think here you can even maybe a little bit of finger pedal, so that we get all of this harmony of the D7 chord, but don't bring it down to piano. And still not, it's still forte, and then diminuendo, and then the most surprising, because after all of this, why wouldn't he just do that? Why wouldn't he just do that? But no, I have a little trick up my sleeve. And you can take a little time there. And then, you see these little jokes, these little puns or things that he's doing. And if you really enjoy them, we'll enjoy them. Yeah? You don't have to overdo it because it's all there in the music. So once more from there. Now staccato. A little bit heavier. Rom, rom, rom. It's very different from bum, 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 rom, bum, 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 bum. Bum, 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 bum. Right. Yeah, good. And then the forte is really forte, and he's playing with the articulation too. Sometimes it's slurred, sometimes, but then not slurred. Yeah. Go on. This is all very, very good what you're doing. Yes. Yeah, sure. Ah, okay. Yeah. Well, I think it's more fun. If there's a difference. Bum, bum. Yeah? Why not have a little fun? Keep going. Now this is staccato. Yum. So this is a different sound from that. Yum. And the left hand is legato. Yeah, so again, you have 3 times the same thing. You knew I was going to say that, right? Yeah, and we scratch our heads, well, what can I do? Well, at least the 3rd time I would do something. Because there's no point in saying the same thing 3 times is the same way. The 3rd time you want to do something a little bit more, whatever you feel, a little more insistent. It doesn't have to be exaggerated, but I would make a little bit more out of the 3rd time. Like now I really mean it. Go ahead. From there. Now then, all of a sudden the whole atmosphere of the music changes when he does. It becomes chromatic. Huh? Big change. I would really bring out that note. And another thing I wanted to mention, have you looked at the phrase structure of this movement? That is, how many measures are there in a phrase? Are the phrases symmetrical, 4 bars, 4 bars? It's worth doing because we often think that in this period everything was cut and dried, square cut, 4 bars, 4 bars. Just an example of where Haydn does that. 4 bars. 4 bars, very square cut, very symmetrical. Not in this movement. You rarely will find a symmetrical phrase, 4 bars, 4 bars. When you look at it, you'll find, oh, sometimes, as in the opening, he writes 6 bars. Sometimes he writes 9 bars, 10 bars. It's all this asymmetrical, and that's part of his humor, is that you never quite know, he's never predictable. Huh? Ah, I heard this, now I'm going to hear that. No, you don't be so sure. You're not sure what you're going to hear. And so here, he gives us this long line that goes on for quite a while. I would add a little pedal to. And notice something interesting. I don't know if you have it in your score or not. Right at that point, he puts a slur in the left hand. Interesting, no? Yeah? So instead of a different sound here. I use the pedal and suspensions, and then the phrase ends there. So if you think of that as all one phrase, it begins here and then goes chromatically, and then the suspension, and then, to me, that's the high point, and then as if he's going to be in the minor key, but he changes his mind and goes back to, what a wonderful moment, and something we should enjoy, where he's not telling jokes and being playful, but somehow some seriousness enters in, so that what follows is even more of a playful character. So can you go from here? Try just a touch of pedal to make the sound a little more poignant and singing. And then suspension. Now resolve. Yeah. And so I think there's a moment that we can really make beautiful and different from much of the rest of the movement. And then it ends quietly. And then all of a sudden, we're back to the hijinks and the humor. And forte, piano. You always need a little bit of time when you go from forte to piano. If you do it just exactly metronomically, it doesn't quite get across the surprise. If you take just a little bit of time, it also allows the ear to adjust, and make sure you don't pedal that note, because the space in between the forte sound and the piano sound is very necessary. Very necessary, huh? We don't want to run them together so that there's no space. A tiny bit of time, then the piano will sound more like a surprise rather than, oh, I expected that. Prom, 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 prom. Prom, 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 prom. Dialogue, right? Witty dialogue. So, go from prom, 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 prom. Pum, 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 pim, pum, 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 pim, pum, yeah, pum, 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 yum, pum, pum, pum. Wait. Wait. Yeah, wait just a fraction of a second, With timing, you see, we deal with milliseconds. Huh? Tiny, tiny, tiny little bits of time, but those little bits of time are so important. They can make such a difference. So if you take just a little bit of time before the change from forte to piano, even after, and don't crescendo. If you crescendo, you give away the surprise that the answer will be forte. Before it was forte, piano, now it's piano, forte, piano, forte. Huh? Piano. Wait just a second, not a second, a millisecond. You still have to do it in time, but it's the musical timing that's important, not the metronomic timing. Yeah? I would also go to the dissonant note, and I think you're underplaying that, so you're sort of a you just take that sound. I know I'm taking it out of the context, but it's not a very pretty sound, is it? So I think the dissonance is something intentional here. And let's go ahead. We don't have a lot of time left, so can we go ahead to the development section? Mm-hmm. And now here's staccato, yum, bum, and he goes to the minor, but he keeps the same counter melody that he had earlier, just turns it into minor and piano. A little more bite, yum, bum, like the beginning. There you gave it that staccato, slight bite to the sound. Yum, bum, bum. And yeah, but this is suddenly, I think, suddenly forte. I don't know if you have a forte in your school. Well, again, one can be very kind of musicological about this. Was that really in the original edition? And you can say, no, so we shouldn't do it. Why not have some fun? Why not have some fun? Why not have some fun? I think it's suddenly forte. Why would he put octaves if he wanted to still play softly? That doesn't really quite fit. So I think suddenly, after all this more or less serious exchange of different voices, and then he hides the theme in the middle. But it's still piano. I think forte, because it's another little joke he's playing, because what beat does he start on here? Not the first beat. He starts on the third beat. He moves the theme over half a bar. Huh? Yeah, so it's a little joke he has. We expect 1, 2, 3. No, it's 3, 4, 1. Yeah? So enjoy it. Enjoy these little jokes. I think this is forte. More, less, and then as before. So can you go from the forte? And again, it's not that articulation. It's not even that articulation. Is bom, 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 bom. Trombones, if he had trombones, I don't know. But I can imagine that could be, huh? That sort of hefty, bom, bom, bom. Go ahead from there. Bom, 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 dee-doo, dee-doo. And then suddenly, incredible change to minor. All of a sudden, out of the blue, after all this. Yeah, and then it becomes. operatic. Huh? Do you know Haydn wrote operas? Yeah. You never hear them performed because Mozart was so great an opera composer. But he wrote operas. And so he knew how to write in an operatic style. And I think here he does. I would make this into some very, very kind of more operatic character. And then suddenly piano. And then as you did, you used the pedal, which is exactly what he wrote. There doesn't seem to be any question that he meant to use the damper pedal. When he says open pedal, we wonder, well, why does he say open pedal? Well, as you may know, if you've ever played an early piano, a forte piano of the period or a reproduction, some of them had not the foot pedal mechanism, but a knee pedal, which you operated with the knee. So when you pushed the lever with your knee, that would open the pedal. So probably that's the kind of piano he had, and where you would have to push out with the knee. But it doesn't mean that you should push the pedal all the way down and just create a big mess of sound and get something like that. Huh? No, I think you can push the pedal very shallow. And maybe even wiggle it a little bit. So you get the effect of this resonance of the pedal, but without making it into mud. And then as you did here, later on, this little music box. That was very, very effective. But do pay more attention to the opportunities for sudden changes, surprises that happen all throughout this movement. It's just so full of them. Notice things like where the slurs are, where they are not, where the articulation changes, how long the phrase is, because sometimes unexpectedly you have a very long phrase and you have to think, well, where does this go? For instance, here you have, again, another serious moment. That's the focal point, the high point, because that's the most dissonant sound, and then it resolves and so on. And again, forte, piano. Big surprise, yeah? I know we're out of time. So, wonderful to hear you play this really wonderful sonata. You do it very, very well. Do you do the other two movements?
I will.
You will, okay. And you'll do them very well. Thank you so much. Yeah, my pleasure. Now we have Eugene. Is Eugene here? Yeah. I have my score.
off and turn pages for me?
play a piece that has always been and will always be one of my great favorites. I can hardly think of a piece more beautiful in every way. Do you agree?
Yes.
I'm sure, because I'm sure that's why you chose it. And how long have you played this piece?
4.5 months.
4.5 months. Well, that's very good. Have you played much Chopin?
Yeah. But nothing this late or this.
Yes, 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 and it's so challenging. I think you understand a lot of this music in terms of the structure, the pacing, the ideas, the intentions, and you know, of course, what a barcarolle is, the whole history of the barcarolle, the boat song. I'm sure you've done your research about that. Do you know any other barcarolles besides?
I looked at some of the Mendelssohn songs without words.
Yeah, interesting, because there are 3 in the songs without words, and the one that that one, which interestingly, apparently, Chopin knew and taught.
He'd never been to Venice.
He has never been to Venice. Isn't that amazing? Of all pieces that evoke the beauties, the splendors of Venice, I mean, this is kind of the top of the list, isn't it? But yet he never went to Venice. It's purely from his imagination. But of course, he knew Italian music from Italian opera. He loved Italian opera. Bellini was one of his favorite composers. So, and he certainly heard barcarolles in operas by Rossini and others. So it's not that he was unfamiliar with the style and the kind of genre of this music, but all from his imagination, just as Debussy never visited Spain, but according to Manuel de Falla, Debussy wrote the most Spanish-sounding music of all composers. So yeah, all barcarolles have this suggestion of the boat and the gondolier, and this particular rocking rhythm, which you get in this. I want to ask you, are you always happy with your sound?
Well, I'm especially not happy now. I was almost in hypothermic shock out there. So cold.
Oh, I see. So it's a temperature thing.
Well, I mean, I get stiff.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I get too pointy.
Yeah. And that's something that can interfere. Because what I'm hearing and listening to you, you have the intentions to make certain sounds, but they're not quite happening. Is that right? Yeah. And I think a lot of it is tension. Tension that you may be aware of, you may not be aware of. I also notice you do a lot of this motion with your arm. Is there a particular reason?
It's to try to avoid that tension.
But, you know, if you went around and did this all day long, I think you would start to feel, because to me this does not relax my arm when I do that. When I just let my arm do that, it's relaxed. So as soon as I manipulate something with these muscles up here, I begin to feel the tension. That's something you might think about.
Yeah, I think my tension is once I get to I sort of press in at the bottom, and then I lock here, and that makes the rest of it stiff. So that's what I'm trying to avoid.
And that takes thought, and it takes really kind of some self-reflection, what is causing this, and maybe looking into some possible therapy to get rid of all this tension that you are aware you have. Because that's the main thing We could talk about, some details and some things to do with voicing and color and pedaling and all those things. But I think for you, the main thing is to get rid of this tension by not letting it happen to begin with. And I think also breathing helps. Are you aware of your breathing?
I'm aware that I'm not breathing.
True confession. Well, in music that is all about the voice, I mean, this is very vocal music, very singing music, I would think breathing is extremely important. Yeah. Because it helps relax the body. And I guess relax is not exactly the right word because, I mean, we've got so much work to do. I mean, it takes so much physical work to play the piano and to play a piece of this difficulty that we can't just be relaxed like when we're asleep. But I think, and I haven't heard you play enough to say, but I think a lot of it is just in your approach to the keys, that there's a certain tendency to hold on, to grip the keys, which is counterproductive. Because as soon as you've made the sound, you have to feel there's no need anymore to push. Your physical work has ended. As soon as you make the sound, the physical work is over. Now, the work of the ear has just begun. Because that's where the ear has to take over and lead each sound to the next sound, to the next sound, to the next sound. The ear is the navigation system of the music, of the sound. So we have the physical system, which has to be very free, fluid, a piece that is all about water, requires fluidity in the way we move. And a piece that is about singing also requires a certain freedom and using our bodies so that we feel just as a singer feels, not tense, not holding the throat, not gripping anything. So the release is very important. As soon as you play that note, and there, of course, you're going to have to get off of the note, but you get off of it as soon as you see it's this, it's not, you don't do that and then get off. No, you get off immediately. It's exactly what happens inside the piano. If you've looked inside the piano, you see this complex mechanism of hammers and dampers and strings and all these moving parts, thousands of them. But what produces the sound, as soon as you push the key down, the hammer strikes the string, but it doesn't stay there. It doesn't stay up against the string. It immediately comes off of the string to allow it to vibrate. So if you think of something like that, we're taking the sound out of the piano, we're not pushing it in. We're taking it out, and even if we have to stay, we can stay, but not push. The physical effort stops as soon as it has begun. So the body then returns to its natural state, which is this and not this. If you keep your body in this state, there's going to be tension all the time. But if you feel it's just like this, it is just like that. Of course, I have to stay here, but my body feels like I am back in this state, not in this state. Does that make any sense to you? So, the energy that we need has to be a kind of fluid energy that fits with the motion of the water. So all of our movements need that kind of fluidity. It's not loose because we have to control everything. But we control it not by gripping and holding. We control it by moving properly. And as you know, because I can hear you doing it, in the rhythm, the meter of the barcarolle, it's always 6/8 or 12/8 in this case, but it's never 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's always 1, 3, 1, 3, 1. It's always that rocking, yum, ta-dum, ta-dum, dee-dum, which you get. And you feel how that rhythm affects the way you feel. You feel like you're actually connecting with this motion. Bottom, bottom. And you feel it here too. It's like circular. And the hand and the arm feel like they're in this, rather than like this. Try it. Breathe. Breathe. Yeah. Now, another idea I have for you is not to be in that attitude. Try looking up.
Well, I'm just afraid of, this is a very scary memorization part for me, so I have to stare at the keys, but I see what you do.
Well, yes, if you have to look at the keys, you can, but you can look at the keys without doing this. As soon as you start to do this, it affects this. And what affects this, affects this, affects this, and affects this. So the tension, while we may not be really aware of it, it can start anywhere. It can start here. And then pretty soon it's traveled up to here. Tension travels. It doesn't just stay in one place. It could. It could start there. Yes, that's for you to discover. But it's not going to just, the solution is not going to be get rid of the tension here, but that's a start. So I think if you keep the head here and not here, and even this, you've seen pianists who do that. You want to feel like your sound is going up here. Yes, that's better. So think of your sound. It only starts here, but it doesn't end there, does it? No? No. It comes out of the piano, and it goes up into the air, and it goes out into the hall, and it's everywhere, right? And then we get away from this sort of being locked and glued into this little area, Think of the openness of the sound as fits the openness of the setting of Venice. And it's very open, it's very outdoors, isn't it? Everything is outdoors. The canals, the gondolas. So think of the sound as going this way. It's not staying here. Yeah, but yes. And let go, let go. Yes, better. I don't think you have to do any kind of rubato with this left hand. It sets the boat in motion, as it were. And it's quite tranquil at this point. Later, of course, the piece is going to become very big and much more ecstatic, and all of those things are going to happen. It's a long piece. But at the start, it's rather calm, I think. And you don't have to, I know you have to go down to here, but always think of the movements we make as being arc-like or circular-like, rather than angular or straight line. If we make straight line movements like this, you see that already produces tension. But if we move this way, we're not tense. You know, when you think of the oar in the water, yes, it does this, it doesn't do that, right? So it's all the combination of the physical and the mental, and even the psychological. It all works together, you know? And one influences the other. So just by telling yourself, I'm rowing the boat gently. And then the singers are ready to sing. Yeah? Relax your shoulder. Yes, that's good. Yeah, so what do you do when you're going to sing? What's the first thing you do? Exactly, yes. Huh? I didn't feel that you did that. Huh? And so your first sound didn't sound like you were doing that. Huh? Yes. Yeah, good. And here we just turned the corner, so we want to do it without accent, right? That's all. It's just the first time the bass moves off of that, and that's one of the things about Chopin, is that there are so many different lines, so many different voices, and they all move their own way. He's the most polyphonic composer you could think of, even though he doesn't sound very much like the polyphony we think of with Bach. Yes, no, it's a different kind of polyphony, but always there's melody, not just the top voice. There's melody in the bass, there's melody in the inner voices, and again, as I said, the ear is our navigation system. The ear is what must be aware of all these different voices. So this is just the movement from one to there. So don't make a big crescendo. Maybe that was unintentional, but when you go, and I think you're getting more the idea that you need to do this and not that. Huh? Not, yes. Keep going. Open up. Yes, instead of, you have these double notes, but think this way. Yeah, this way. That's right, with a lightness in your hand, not, you think this is going to make you tense because you think, I have to play double notes now, just, yes, it's already a better sound. See, now, when you get to the top of this phrase, the way you can make that really ring and sing is not by going down this way with this motion. The last thing I want to do is to go vertically down onto the key. That's a stab. And that's the sound we will get. You can glide into the key. You can go this way, you can go that way. If you tell yourself, I'm not going to go like that, find another way. Yeah. Yeah, see that had a ring to it. You also were able to voice that way. Yeah? See? So you have to find how you can unlock your body to get the sounds that satisfy you. That's the whole thing. And it's not by going this way, because that either comes from tension that's already there, or it produces tension that will not immediately go away. So, or if you want more sound, fine. You can adjust the amount of sound to your liking, but the main thing is not how much, but what kind of sound, what quality of sound. Does it sing? Does it ring? Does it vibrate? Does it emanate from the piano out into the world, so to speak? Huh? And always think that's what we're doing. We're bringing sound out to others, not keeping it to ourselves. Huh? If you think of it that way, it's amazing how the mental can really affect the physical. Huh? And so if you just think them and practice so that you really get the sounds you want. You don't have to be playing the piece in the right tempo or any of that, but just work on getting the sound that makes you happy. Huh? And then you'll be a happier pianist, and everybody else will be happier too. So you did some really beautiful things, and this was lovely, the way you, that wonderful color change. The music is so full of those things, and some of the things you're struggling with are these. And you're telling me that's really hard, right? By the way you're playing it. First of all, just think of the top voice. The other notes are just there. And you don't have to play every note legato. You see, you have the pedal, so you don't have to struggle to do that. That's really effortful. But just, I'm not really trying to connect the lower notes, because that makes my hand tight. Yeah, and maybe you do this already, but take that with the left hand. Yeah, that's a good idea, because this is very, very effortful to do that. So, and it will be much easier. Go on, and the same, yes. So Eugene, good. I want to ask you, are there other places where you feel you're also having to struggle to get either the notes or to get the sound?
It's especially the coda.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how fast I should try to take it, but I'm struggling to clear the pedal in time, and then not push the top voice.
Right.
There are many other places, but this is
Yeah, yeah. So I hear what you're saying. One of the things about voicing that I don't think we think about enough is when we say we have a ton of notes to play, we want the melody to shine through. So we still hear that glorious melody. So what do we think of? We think of bringing out more of the top. Bring it out more. Think the opposite. Reduce the rest. Bring the rest down. So you don't need to play every note fortissimo. That's not what a composer means when he writes a fortissimo. Every note should be fortissimo. No, we don't want that, because then it wouldn't sound good at all. So reduce the rest. You don't have to play all of this fortissimo. You know that. And you don't have to play, or whatever it is. All of those notes fortissimo. Only bring out what needs to be brought out. Reduce the rest. But see, this way rather than, if you do that, it's a totally different sound than when you do that. What am I doing? I'm just not doing that. I'm going in. You can glide in. You can move your hand this way and this way and this way. The only thing you're not going to do is move this way. The key will still go down. That's the only way it can go. We can't change that. The key is going to go down. It's not going to go any other way. But we can change the way we get the key to go down. And that's what makes the difference in the sound. Try it. You see how I'm not trying to connect those notes. Yeah, don't hold anything. Everything is doubled. We have the thumb and the fifth finger. If you want more of the top, less of the thumb. Much less of the thumb. Yes. So practice it really exaggerating. Yeah, practice it really exaggerating the difference. So it's not just a little bit less, but much. Not. You hear the difference in the sound? Yeah. And it always will sound better when we layer our sound. When we have doubling, if we have an octave, 5 and 1, decide what we want to bring out more. Because nothing sounds worse on the piano than a sound that is just monochromatic, has no layers, no levels. So, and that takes practice, of course. That's not easy to achieve. But if you just bring the thumb down much more, and you see the thumb is simply doing that now. Because thumbs always want to grab on. Yeah. Yeah, see, you're already on the right track. You already understand how you can work on that. Yeah? Now, sometimes you may want the thumbs. That's fine. I do it here. To change the color, I'll bring out a little, which gives me a slightly darker color. That's an option we have. Yeah? But the thing is no sound you make should be accidental. It should be what you know you want, what you hear in here, and then what comes out of the piano. Well, I'm afraid we are out of time, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about what to me is one of the most marvelous moments in this entire piece, which is so full of beauty and splendor and everything. But it's this moment where suddenly the music slows down. such an extraordinary moment. It becomes very mysterious. And then you have this sigh. You know, Chopin's music is full of sighs. And a longer sigh. It's almost as if he's dying or taking his last breath. It's such a wonderful, unexpected moment. And then all of a sudden, what happens? This melody comes floating in from somewhere out there, right? And the word he uses is one you rarely find, svogato. What does that mean? Huh?
Airy?
Thin, light, airy. It's not that kind of sound, but something like coming from an angel, right? And then it opens up, but not to forte, no forte yet. Lighter, lighter. Take your time. You don't want to hurry. You don't want to hurry. And then piano. And gradually. Yeah. So that's something that's worth thinking over how you approach this moment, which to me is just absolutely miraculous. Because what happens after that is it revives and it leads to this ecstatic, euphoric climax. But there's something so poignant about this moment, and you don't want to hurry it. And it's a very special sound that you can achieve there. And then after this big moment, this big climax, where he comes to where the piece is beginning to end. It's so full of nostalgia, as much of late Chopin is. And the inner voices are so wonderful and so rich. And there's so much. This is sort of pain here, huh? It's not all smiles. It's just, again, as I was saying in the Beethoven Lebewohl, there's this mixture of feelings that makes the music so rich, a wonderful tapestry of sound. So keep exploring the piece. I think I hear you have a lot of good ideas, a lot of good thoughts, a lot of good intentions. Now you have to work on being able to achieve them, and the first step is unlock, release the tension, bring the sound out. Bring your intentions out there. Okay? Thank you. Thanks for playing.
That was not my best.
Uh-huh.